They told me the job would break me, that she would. 3 drivers in 2 months, the dispatcher said, shaking his head like he'd seen a car wreck he still couldn't forget. You sure about this, Marcus? I wasn't sure about anything except rent was late, my boys' school fees weren't going to pay themselves, and my fridge had more air than food. So yeah, I was sure. Her name was Evelyn Hartwell. Old money, new money, all the money. CEO of something with too many words in the title. The kind of woman business magazines put on the cover with captions like the Ice Queen of Wall Street. Her reputation was the stuff of legends, cold, impatient, impossible to please. And yet she paid more for a week's driving than I'd make in a month working rideshare. The first morning, I pulled into her driveway in the company-issued black Cadillac Escalade, the kind of ride that smelled like leather and quiet power. Her house sat on a hill in the Hamptons, glass and white stone, the kind of place where every angle looked like it was designed to make you feel poor. Don't arrive too early, the dispatcher had warned. She hates that, but if you're late, you're gone. I parked at exactly 6:30 a.m., hands resting on the wheel, trying to steady my heartbeat. 10 seconds later, the front door opened. Evelyn Hartwell stepped out like the morning belonged to her. Blonde hair pulled into a perfect twist, tailored navy suit. Sunglasses, even though the sun was barely up. She moved like someone who didn't need to rush, because the world would wait for her. She didn't say, hello, just opened the back door, slid in and said, we'll leave. Yes, ma'am. She adjusted her sunglasses, voice cutting through the air like it was made to slice. Don't call me ma'am. Call me Evelyn. Or Ms. Hartwell, if you must be formal. Yes, Ms. Hartwell. We pulled out onto the road toward Manhattan. The early morning streets already warming with commuters and delivery trucks. She opened a leather folder, pen in hand, scribbling in quick, sharp strokes. Her phone rang. She put it on speaker. Tell legal to rewrite the contract. Clause 9 stays. I don't care what they think. It's my company, not a democracy, she said, her tone cold enough to frost the windows. Then, without missing a beat, she ended the call and looked up at me in the rear view. Why'd you take this job, Marcus? I kept my eyes on the road. Because I heard it was hard, and I'm good at heart. Her lips twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite. Good answer. Let's see if it's true. If you are enjoying this story, please let us know where you are listening from. Let's know how far our story travels. Traffic on the Long Island Expressway was already snarling. I eased the Escalade into a gap, keeping the ride smooth. At one point, an aggressive BMW cut us off. I braked just enough to avoid spilling the coffee she'd been ignoring. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine in the mirror. Then she went back to her papers. That silence felt like a stamp of approval. Her first meeting was in Midtown. We got there 7 minutes early. I was proud of that until she said, next time, 5 minutes early. 7 makes me feel like I'm waiting. And then she was gone, leaving a faint trace of her perfume and authority in the car. She came back 30 minutes later. She noticed my phone face down on the console. Most drivers scroll the whole time I'm inside, she said. I've got a son, I told her. If I'm not with him, I'd rather keep my head clear in case he calls. That earned me another one of those almost smiles. How old? 10. Smart enough to know when I'm tired. Too smart for his own good. She nodded slowly. 10 is dangerous. They start remembering things they'll never forget. By the time we made our third stop, I'd learned something important. Evelyn didn't hate people. She hated inefficiency. Wasted time. Wasted words. The way she operated. Every second was either making her richer or making her angrier. Around lunch, we got caught in a rainstorm on the West Side Highway. She leaned forward slightly. I have to be at the plaza in 15 minutes. Non-negotiable. I didn't panic. Just found the gaps, took the streets nobody else thought to use, and slid us under the plaza's awning at exactly 1:59 p.m. Before she stepped out, she paused. You enjoyed today, she said flatly. I did. And you enjoyed my company. Not a question. I glanced in the mirror. I enjoyed the job, I said carefully. Then, after a beat, and the company. This time she actually smiled. Just a little. Tomorrow, same time. And Marcus, bring an umbrella. Big enough for 2. When she walked into the hotel, I realized something strange. This job wasn't just paying the bills. It was pulling me into a world I didn't belong in, but maybe, just maybe, she wanted me there. The second morning, I arrived at exactly 6:30 again. Same black Escalade. Same empty stretch of Hampton's driveway. Only this time, Evelyn was already outside, standing under the stone archway with a coffee cup in one hand and her phone in the other. "Good. You're on time," she said as she slid in, crisp as the pages of a brand new contract. No small talk, no smile. But her coffee was in a reusable mug this time, not the high-end disposable cups I'd seen yesterday. We eased out toward the main road, the ocean fog clinging to the air like it didn't want to let go of the shore. "Halfway to Manhattan," she asked. "Do you ever listen to music while you drive?" "Sometimes," I said. "Depends on the passenger." "And what does this passenger get?" I kept my voice even. "Silence, unless you prefer something else." She looked at me over the rim of her sunglasses. "Surprise me, but no pop. And if you play country, I'll fire you before the next exit." I flicked through the playlist on my phone until I found some old-school jazz. Miles Davis, Coltrane. The car filled with warm trumpet notes that made the gray morning feel almost expensive. She didn't say anything for a long while. Then, barely loud enough to hear over the saxophone, she murmured, "My father used to play this. When the market crashed in '87, he'd just sit in his study, pour a drink, and let this music play until the ice melted in the glass." I didn't know if she meant to share that, but I let the moment sit there quiet and unbroken until her phone rang and she was back in CEO mode. We made her first 2 stops without incident. On the third, as she walked back to the car, I noticed her adjusting her sleeve like she was hiding something. When she got in, she caught me glancing in the mirror. "Is there a problem, Marcus?" "No, ma'am," I stopped myself. "No, Miss Hartwell. Just making sure you're comfortable." She didn't answer, but I caught the faintest smirk before she turned her gaze out the window. It was just afternoon when the day got interesting. She had a meeting downtown, but traffic near the Brooklyn Bridge was locked tighter than a vault. I suggested an alternate route through side streets most chauffeurs wouldn't bother with. "You sure?" she asked. "This is New York, not a Sunday drive in the country." "Trust me." She did. I threaded us through Chinatown, down narrow lanes painted with the shadows of fire escapes, past shopkeepers unloading crates of produce. Twice, we squeezed between double-parked delivery vans with barely an inch to spare. When we finally pulled up in front of her meeting spot, she looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. "You drive like you've been doing this your whole life." I shrugged. "Started at 16. First job was delivering flowers. You learn quick how to get somewhere fast without crushing the roses." Something softened in her expression. So quick I might have imagined it. "You'll wait here," she said, and stepped out. She was gone for almost an hour. When she came back, she was holding a small paper bag. She climbed in and handed it over the console. "Turkey on rye. Extra mustard. They said it's the best in the city." I frowned. "For me? Do I look like I eat rye bread, Marcus?" I took it, unsure if this was some strange test. "Thanks." She waved it off. "You need to eat if you're going to keep driving like that. Consider it an investment. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this." On the ride back uptown, her phone died mid-call. She muttered something sharp under her breath, and I reached into the glove compartment, pulling out a charger. Her eyebrow arched. "You keep this in here?" "Always. People don't like to admit it, but dead batteries ruin more days than bad weather." That earned me an actual laugh. Quick, dry, but real. You might be the first person who's ever thought ahead for me. We were almost back at her place when she asked, "Your son, what's his name?" "Caleb." "What does Caleb want to be when he grows up?" I smiled. "Changes every week. Last month it was a firefighter. Yesterday it was an astronaut. Today, I think it's NBA point guard." "And what do you want him to be?" I thought about it. Happy. The rest will take care of itself. She was quiet after that, staring out the window as we turned up her driveway. Before she got out, she leaned forward just slightly. "Tomorrow, bring him with you. Not for the whole day, just for the ride back from my last meeting." I blinked. "You sure?" "Yes." She opened the door, then looked back. "He might as well see where hard work can take you." The door closed, and she was gone again, walking into that massive house like nothing had happened. But as I sat there with the engine idling, I realized something. Evelyn Hartwell wasn't just tolerating me. She was letting me in, and that I knew was dangerous. The next morning felt different before I'd even left the house. Caleb was in the kitchen, swinging his legs from a stool while eating cereal. The box turned toward him like he was studying for an exam. "You sure this lady wants to meet me?" he asked between spoonfuls. "She's not just a lady," I said, pulling his jacket from the hook. "She's my boss. And yeah, she asked for you by name." He frowned like that didn't make sense. Rich people don't talk to kids like me. "Maybe you'll be the first," I said, tousling his hair. Evelyn was waiting outside again when I pulled up at 6:30 sharp. Her gaze flicked to the back seat, where Caleb was sitting quietly, his eyes big as quarters. "This him?" she asked, sliding in. "This is Caleb," I said. "Good morning, Caleb," she said, crisp but not unkind. He hesitated. "Morning, Miss Hartwell." She gave the faintest smile. "You're more polite than your father." The first half of the day went as usual, meetings, phone calls, me weaving through Manhattan traffic like it was a puzzle only I could solve. Caleb sat in the back with Evelyn, earbuds in, but I caught him sneaking glances at her between songs. She noticed too. At one point, while we were stopped outside a glass office tower, she asked, "What are you listening to?" Kendrick Lamar," he said cautiously. Her eyebrows lifted. "Good taste." I nearly missed the green light. By lunch, we were parked outside a private members club where Evelyn was meeting an investor. Before getting out, she looked at Caleb. "You like steak?" "Never had it," he admitted. She paused, then said, "Then you're coming with me." I started to protest. This was not part of the plan. But she cut me off. "Marcus, you can wait here. He's my guest." And just like that, they were gone. 45 minutes later, they returned. Caleb had a napkin tucked into his collar, like he'd just walked out of a royal banquet. "How was it?" I asked. He grinned. "They cooked it so you didn't even need teeth." Evelyn smirked. "Medium rare. Anything else would be uncivilized." On the drive back to her house, it started to rain. Big, slow drops at first, then a steady curtain. Evelyn leaned forward and said, "Caleb, do you play basketball?" "Yeah, school team," he said. "I'm point guard." She nodded approvingly. "I played in high school. Not point guard, though. Too much running. I preferred to shoot." Caleb's eyes went wide. "You played sports?" Surprised, she asked. "A little," he admitted. "You seem like you just work all the time." Her gaze met mine in the mirror, then went back to him. "Work pays for the things you care about. You'll learn that soon enough." When we pulled into her driveway, she didn't get out right away. Instead, she turned to Caleb. "You should come by again. Next time I'll show you the court in the back." He brightened instantly. "You have a court?" "I have everything," she said with a hint of amusement. "The trick is knowing what's worth sharing." After she went inside, Caleb turned to me as I drove away. "She's not what I expected." "How so?" "She's kind of nice. But, she hides it so no one figures it out." I glanced at him. "You might be the first person to see that in her." He shrugged. "Then maybe she needs more people like me around." I didn't answer. But as the rain streaked down the windshield, I knew he was right. And that was exactly why I was starting to worry. Because the more she let us in, the harder it was going to be to keep the lines from blurring. It started with a text I didn't expect. Saturday morning, 10:04 a.m., I was making pancakes in my kitchen. Well, something that looked like pancakes, but probably qualified as edible paper. When my phone buzzed. "Evelyn, if you and Caleb are free this afternoon, come by at 3. Bring sneakers." I stared at the screen for a solid 30 seconds. Evelyn Hartwell didn't invite people. She summoned them, like court dates or federal subpoenas. Caleb came into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Who's texting you this early?" "It's not early," I said, flipping a pancake that landed slightly off-center on the plate. "It's Evelyn." He froze halfway to the fridge. "Wait, she wants us to come to her place? On a Saturday? That's what it says." I turned the phone toward him. He read it twice, then grinned. "She probably wants to play basketball. Or test my reflexes by having me dodge her mood swings," I muttered. But my hands were already rinsing the mixing bowl. By 2:58, we were pulling into her long driveway in the Escalade. The house looked different in the daylight, less like a fortress and more like a magazine spread. Glass walls catching the sunlight, manicured hedges, the ocean glittering in the distance. She was waiting outside again, dressed in black athletic pants, a fitted white tee, and sneakers that looked like they'd never seen a speck of dust. "Right on time," she said, eyeing Caleb. Good. Let's see if you two can keep up. We followed her around the side of the house, down a stone path lined with rose bushes, until we reached a basketball court tucked behind a row of tall hedges. The paint on the lines looked fresh, the hoop gleaming in the sun. You play here? Caleb asked, wide-eyed. Sometimes, she said. Mostly, it's just for show. But today, it's for you. For the next 20 minutes, Evelyn rebounded, while Caleb practiced his jump shot. She didn't hover, just tossed the ball back each time, offering short, precise tips. Bend your knees more. Follow through with your wrist. You're aiming at the rim. Aim at the back of the net instead. Caleb soaked up like a sponge, adjusting after each shot. And somewhere in the middle of it, I noticed something I'd never seen before. Evelyn laughing. Not the clipped, polite chuckle she gave at boardroom jokes, but a full, unguarded laugh when Caleb nailed a perfect swish and did a little victory dance. You've got style, she told him. He grinned. Got it from my dad. Her eyes flicked to me. Did you? Some, I said, stepping forward, but I was more defense than offense. Then guard me, she challenged, grabbing the ball. I raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? I don't invite people here to go easy on them. We played a quick one-on-one, while Caleb cheered from the sideline. She was faster than I expected, but I had a height advantage. Still, she managed to slip past me twice, laying the ball up with a satisfied smirk. When she finally called a break, we sat on the court's edge, sipping bottled water. She glanced at Caleb. Your father's good at this. He's good at everything, Caleb said, without hesitation. The compliment hit me harder than it should have. I cleared my throat. Don't listen to him, he's biased. Sometimes the biased ones see the clearest, Evelyn said quietly. After basketball, she surprised us again. Come inside. I'll show you something. We followed her through the back patio doors into a room I'd never been in before, a library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves, a rolling ladder, a big leather armchair by the window. It smelled like old books and money. Caleb's jaw dropped. You have all these? Collected over the years, she said. First editions, rare prints, and some from my childhood. She walked to a lower shelf and pulled out a worn copy of The Phantom Tollbooth. This is the first book I ever loved. My father read it to me when I was about your age. She held it out to Caleb. Borrow it, but only if you promise to return it. He took it with both hands, like it was something fragile. I promise. In the kitchen, she made tea for herself, lemonade for Caleb, and coffee for me. Watching Evelyn Hartwell pour lemonade into a glass felt like seeing a hawk feed songbirds. Unnatural but oddly mesmerizing. You always make your own drinks? I asked. When I want them done right, she said. Caleb wandered off to explore the patio, leaving us alone at the island counter. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, You're a good father. I blinked. That's not something I hear often. You should, she said simply. It's rare. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded, feeling a weight in my chest I couldn't name. Around 6:30, as the sun started dipping toward the horizon, she walked us back to the car. Same time Monday? I asked. She hesitated for half a second. Unusual for her, then said, Yes. And Marcus? I turned. Yeah. Her eyes held mine a beat longer than they needed to. Thanks for coming today, both of you. Caleb waved from the back seat. Bye, Ms. Hartwell. She smiled, really smiled, and waved back. Now I have a question for you guys. Have you ever driven a rich perso before, and how was the experience? Driving away, Caleb said. She's different when she's not working. Yeah, I said, keeping my eyes on the road. She likes you. I glanced at him in the mirror. She likes us. He shrugged. Same thing. I didn't answer, but my hands tightened just slightly on the wheel, because I knew the boy was right. Only it wasn't the likes part that worried me. It was how easy it was becoming to like her back. Monday morning, the usual routine. Only this time, Evelyn wasn't buried in her phone when I pulled up. She was standing by the curb with a travel mug in her hand, looking out toward the water like she was thinking about something she couldn't quite touch. She slid into the back seat, set the mug down, and said, We're taking the scenic route today. I glanced at her in the mirror. Scenic? On a Monday morning? Consider a detour, she said, buckling her seatbelt. We'll still get where we need to be. So I drove down the coastal road, past rows of wind-worn houses and stretches of beach where the tide was still low. The city's glass skyline waited far ahead, but for a while it felt like we had all the time in the world. Half an hour in, she broke the quiet. My mother hated the ocean, she said suddenly. Said it made her feel small. My father loved it. Said it reminded him there were bigger things than the stock market. She smirked faintly. I ended up somewhere in between. I didn't turn around, just kept my voice steady. Which one do you believe? She looked out the window. I think the ocean doesn't care either way. It wasn't the kind of thing Evelyn usually shared. I let it sit there. At the first stoplight in the city, she caught my eyes in the mirror. Do you ever think about what you'd be doing if life had gone differently? All the time, I admitted. But I've got Caleb. I wouldn't trade that for any other road. That earned me a small, real smile. You know, I envy that certainty. You? Envy? I said before I could stop myself. Yes, she said plainly. You know who you are. People think I'm unshakable, but half the time I'm making decisions on instinct and praying they hold. It was the closest she'd ever come to admitting doubt. We hit traffic on Fifth Avenue. She set her phone down and leaned back, studying me like I was another deal she had to figure out. Marcus, how long do you plan to keep this job? I raised an eyebrow. You thinking of firing me? No, I'm thinking of keeping you around. Something in the way, she said it wasn't just about driving. The rest of the day passed without drama. Meetings, drop-offs, quick turns through crowded streets. But when I dropped her at her last stop, she didn't get out immediately. Instead, she said, Caleb's a good kid. If he ever needs anything, a school recommendation, a summer program, tell me. I nodded slowly. I remember that. She opened the door, then paused. And Marcus? Yeah. Don't underestimate how much people notice when you care. Then she was gone, heels clicking on the marble steps like nothing had happened. By Wednesday, the shift between Evelyn and me wasn't just something I could feel. It was starting to have a shadow, the kind other people noticed. It started outside an upscale restaurant on Park Avenue. She just finished a lunch meeting with some executive type in a blue pinstripe suit. When she stepped out, I was already holding the door of the Escalade open. She moved past me, close enough for her perfume to hit, a cool blend of citrus and something warmer underneath. And as she climbed in, she touched my arm briefly, just a light press, natural. But across the sidewalk, a man in a tailored gray suit holding a phone froze mid-swipe. His eyes tracked her, then me, then back to her. He didn't say anything, but the raised eyebrows said enough. The day kept moving, Midtown then down to Soho. Evelyn had a meeting at a private art gallery, one of those hidden appointment-only places with blacked-out windows. While she was inside, I idled in the loading zone. That's when the valet in a maroon blazer strolled over. Your Hartwell's new guy, huh? He asked, leaning one arm casually against the Escalade. I kept my tone neutral. I'm her driver. He smirked. Sure, that's all you are. I didn't answer, just rolled the window back up, slow enough to make my point. But his words sat in my head like a pebble in a shoe. You can ignore it, but you still feel it with every step. When Evelyn came back out 20 minutes later, something in her posture told me she wasn't just thinking about the meeting. Everything all right? I asked as she slid into the seat. She looked at her phone, thumb hovering over the screen. My sister called. She saw us in the paper last week. In the paper? I frowned. She gave a clip nod. Some gossip column ran a photo. Me leaving the plaza with you holding the umbrella. Apparently that's a headline now. I thought of the man in gray, the valet, the lingering glances. That a problem? Her eyes met mine in the rearview. Only if we let it be. Traffic thickened as we headed uptown. Evelyn set her phone down and folded her hands in her lap, eyes drifting over the blur of pedestrians outside. You know, Marcus, she said finally, people like me, we're not allowed to have friendships that don't look strategic. Every connection is dissected. Every photo gets spun into a story. And me? I asked quietly. You, she said, don't fit into the picture they're used to, which makes you interesting and dangerous. I gave a dry laugh. Story of my life. Her gaze stayed steady. That's not necessarily bad, but it does mean we'll be watched. Her next meeting was at a high-rise law firm downtown. She stepped out, told me she'd be 30 minutes. While she was gone, my phone buzzed with a message from Caleb's school. Reminder about the fundraiser this Friday. I was halfway through typing a reply when something caught my eye. Across the street, leaning against a newsstand, was the same man in gray from earlier, pretending to check his watch, not looking at me directly, but not looking either. I sat back, let my hand rest on the wheel, and kept my eyes forward. When Evelyn returned 25 minutes later, he was gone. On the way to her next stop, she sat forward slightly. "You're quiet." I shrugged, just thinking. "About?" "That guy in the gray suit who keeps popping up where we are." Her lips tightened. "Ignore him. Doesn't seem like someone you'd want to ignore." She looked away out the window. "He's a journalist. The kind who sells whispers dressed up as facts. Don't give him what he's looking for." We made one last stop before heading back to her house. It was almost sunset when I pulled into her driveway. She didn't get out right away. "Marcus," she said finally, "you need to understand something. The more time we spend together, the more people will interpret it. They'll decide for themselves what we are. And once that happens, it doesn't matter what's true." I met her eyes in the mirror. "And what is true?" She held my gaze, steady and unreadable. "That's for me to know right now, and for you to decide if it's worth the noise." She stepped out, heels clicking against the stone, the door closing with that soft, expensive sound. As I drove away, I caught movement in the rear view, someone in gray stepping out from behind a hedge, watching her walk inside. This time, I didn't need an explanation. Friday evening was supposed to be simple. Pick Evelyn up from a charity gala in Midtown, drive her back to the Hamptons. Nothing more. But when she stepped out of the ballroom into the valet circle, I knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Cameras flashed, not just from event photographers, but from people who had no business being there, tabloid freelancers, social media hounds. And at the edge of the crowd, standing like he owned the sidewalk, was the man in the gray suit. I opened the rear door for her. She slid in, face calm, voice low. "Drive." The Escalade glided away from the curb, but I could feel the heat of the eyes we'd left behind. "You want to tell me why that guy's been following us all week?" I asked. She was silent for a long beat. Then, "Because I told him not to write a story about us, and that made him want to write it even more." I glanced in the mirror. "What story?" Her gaze met mine steady. "But the Ice Queen has a favorite. That her driver isn't just her driver." We hit the bridge, city lights spilling across the dark water. "You care what people think?" I asked. "I care about the board. Investors. They like things clean, uncomplicated." "And this?" I pressed. She looked away. "This isn't uncomplicated." For the next 30 minutes, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional thump of tires over uneven pavement. By the time we turned up her driveway, the tension in the car was thick enough to taste. I parked, engine idling. She didn't move to get out. "Marcus," she said finally, "you've been good for Caleb. You've been good for me. But there are lines I can't cross without losing more than you can imagine." I kept my hands on the wheel. "Then tell me where the line is." She hesitated, and that hesitation told me more than any answer could. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then put it face down on the seat. My sister texted. "So if I want to keep my image intact, I should let you go." I exhaled slowly. "And what do you want?" Her eyes found mine in the mirror. "I want to keep you around." For a moment, we just looked at each other. No boardrooms, no cameras, no gray-suited watchers. Just her and me, and the weight of everything unsaid. Finally, she reached for the door handle. "Monday, 6:30 sharp. Evelyn." She turned back, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. "Bring Caleb next weekend. We'll need a rematch on the court." And then she was gone, walking into the house without another word. As I drove away, I knew nothing had been settled. The eyes would still be watching, the whispers still circling. But I also knew something else. Evelyn Hartwell didn't invite people into her life unless she meant it. And whatever this was, however complicated it might get, I wasn't going anywhere. If you got to the end of this story, please support this channel with your likes and subscribe. It will go a long way.